Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of grandiose cult leaders. We're going to be looking at how they use their behaviors and body language to manipulate and control. Before we get started, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So the first cult leader we're going to look at is Jim Jones of the People's Temple. He led to the deaths of 918 people after they drank poison Kool-Aid. That's where the term drinking the Kool-Aid comes from. Let's look at some of his behavior and body language while he preaches.
Ingram, you're concerned about the losing of your sight.
All right, one thing you're already going to notice, he's talking about somebody losing their sight. You see him stop, scratch above his eyebrow. Now, typically we think of that as an involuntary reaction, but that was very much voluntary to make it look like he was concerned, to make it look like he's thinking and that he's concentrating on this. Watch how deliberate this is.
Losing of your sight. You're not able.
Now, when we talk about grandiosity, look at the position right here. This is like a Superman stance. He's got his nose in the air, his hands on his hips. He's trying to make a dominant stance. This is what we do when we want to appear dominant. We put our hands on our hips. We take up as much space as possible. We put our nose in the air as though we feel better than other people, that we're greater than other people. So this very much is a grandiose stance to take, particularly while preaching, of all things.
Able to see me clearly. You've told me nothing about your condition.
So you'll notice when he stares very intensely. He also happens to have people in the audience that are fake, that don't actually have these various maladies that he's going to pretend to cure. Let's just keep watching.
No, I haven't.
All right, you notice the lip lick right there? If you have watched my videos before, you'll know that psychopaths, oftentimes before they start doing one of their ruses, they get excited, their mouth dries up a little bit, they start licking their lips. That can happen when we're anxious too, but I don't think Jim Jones is anxious right here. Watch this.
Nothing about your condition. No, I haven't. Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby.
When we talk about grandiosity, you see him reaching out there. He has a large presence. He takes up as much space as he wants to, and that's important to him so that he seems larger than life.
Peace. Now.
See, there's the lip licking again when he gets that cheer, when the audience really gets going. This is exciting to him.
Now. Take your glasses off. Just dare. One of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see.
All right, now you see his eyebrows going up and down. Now, we do this in a normal way for emphasis. That's not always manipulative. But you can see as he's doing this right here, and he knows he's manipulating his audience. He knows this is fake. But this is what he wants them to hear. He's talking about the blindness. Watch his eyebrows when he talks about that.
Childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see.
So he wants to make sure that people get that point. This person was blind and couldn't see.
Fingers, are your fingers numb? In your right hand.
All right, and so when he's feeling on his hands, that gives people a sense of trust. That sounds weird, but when people move around a lot because they're not trying to hide, that makes them more believable. So as he does these exaggerated movements, as he has this con going, it's going to be very compelling to vulnerable people.
In your right hand. Having enormous headaches in your head.
Yes.
And she's a plant, just to be perfectly clear about that.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone?
So body language is a really important part of how he fools people. The woman reached out, who was a plant. He reaches out back to her. It's like there is an exchange of energy between them. And putting on that performance, using their bodies like that, rather than him just closing his eyes and saying you're healed and not moving around, it becomes a performance. It becomes theatrical. So the theatrics get people more involved. It gets them more excited. Using that kind of energy makes people seem more believable. People inherently want to believe somebody more when they do things with a lot of energy. And Jim Jones is known for his emotional intensity. So if we're to distill down Jim Jones's strengths, we're looking at someone with emotional intensity and charismatic manipulation. Now we're going to watch some of Marshall Applewhite. His cult leader name was Doe. He was a really strange one. He led the Heaven's Gate cult. As the Hale-Bopp comet was passing by Earth, Applewhite and all of his followers died so that they could ride on the Hale-Bopp comet and go on adventures. It was a very strange story for a very strange man. We're going to look at some of his body language and see the grandiosity that he used and how he manipulated.
That was indeed from the kingdom of heaven came, and that mind was here 2,000 years ago, and that mind came for the express purpose of teaching humans how.
Now, this is something I've pointed out in another video I did on Applewhite, because I did a full-length video on him. This is just going to be a short segment. But his stare is unbelievable. He doesn't blink. He just stares straight through the people listening. This video is meant for people that were sort of going through an onboarding process, that were joining the cult. And so this is him talking about his various beliefs.
How they could be saved, how they would not be plowed under at the end of the age.
And you can see he keeps his eyebrows up the whole time. Oftentimes when we talk to emphasize, we raise our eyebrows briefly to make a point, to emphasize a certain word. He just stands there with his eyes wide open. He keeps his eyebrows up the whole time. It's a very unusual, peculiar, and probably mesmerizing stare for vulnerable people that want to connect with him.
Well, we're at the end of the age. So the one or the mind that was in Jesus, what? That mind is in me?
So he poses things like this oftentimes because he gives the illusion of choice to people. He'll say something like that the mind of Jesus is inside him, but pose it as a question. And they'll go, well, you don't have to believe that. But for vulnerable people that like him and are drawn in by him, they are going to believe that. It's such an odd way to gather followers, but it works for a very small percentage of the population. For the people that are vulnerable to this kind of thing, they're going to feel connected to him. They're going to believe him. And this kind of grandiosity, to them, they're going to look at him and think, wow, this guy is so important. Where the vast majority of us watch it and go, this guy is really quite weird. Some people are drawn in by this. They feel sort of hypnotized by it. They're mesmerized by the way that he's talking. Let's listen to him say that again.
One or mind that was in Jesus, what? That mind is in me? You'll have to decide that for yourself. I must admit that I am here again, that I'm here saying exactly the same thing that I said then.
And you see the slight smile on his face. He tries to do these fake emotions so that people will reflect that. Because what oftentimes happens when we smile, other people want to smile back. So if there are people that he's getting to, if that small percentage of people that actually buy this nonsense are connecting with him, when he smiles, it's going to make them smile. It's going to make them more likely to believe what he just said about the mind of Jesus being within him.
That I'm here saying exactly the same thing that I said then, trying to say it in today's language, trying to hope that for your sakes you can see what we have to offer you, for our Father offers you life.
You also have to realize, if you've seen interviews with a lot of the people that followed Heaven's Gate, a lot of them are sort of outcasts. They're people that probably didn't fit in very well other places. They struggled. And this was somebody who said, I accept you. And look, guess what? You get a chance to believe somebody like me. You don't have to, but you can.
A civilization evolves upward, that each segment of civilization becomes more civilized, less barbaric in some ways.
So he's talking about things that to someone who is buying this is going to see him as hyper-rational, because that's part of how he convinces people. He tries to talk through things that are wildly irrational and wildly unreasonable, but the way that he says them, the way that he frames them, for people that are vulnerable to this, they're going to very much think that he's the most rational person they've ever heard. This all makes sense. He's seeing things other people don't, and he's using science and reason and thought.
I am the return of the Son of my Father. I'll tell you something that's even more remarkable. My Father came with me this time.
Now he's using fake emotion, and what he hopes is that him doing this will connect with people and make them cry too. This is fake crying. It's not even very good acting, but he has these fake tears well up. He makes his voice quiver. And for somebody who is vulnerable, once again, they're going to think, this person gets me. This person's important. Look how moved they are. Because only someone who's real and genuine would have these kinds of emotions. I'm going to go back and then we'll keep watching.
My Father came with me this time. I'm here to offer you, as these are, an opportunity to know the truth so that if you can connect with it at any level, then you might survive the respading or the recycling.
And there was the lip licking, like I always point out. This is another part that excites him. When he starts getting stuff over on people, when he starts saying things that he thinks are really compelling or exciting or convincing, you see the mouth drying up, you see the lip licking again. So if we're to look at his skills in terms of how he manipulates people, he tries to be mesmerizing and he tries to be rational. Neither of those things, I think, work on the vast majority of us, but for those people that are vulnerable, those are the ways that he can help get to them. Now we're going to watch some of David Koresh. He led the Branch Davidians, many of whom perished in the face-off at Waco.
An audience with the man with the fatal charm.
I failed school. I quit in 9th grade because I had other things I had to do.
Like what?
I had to learn some things. I'm a student.
Now, this is interesting. We're going to watch him in front of his congregation in a little bit, but his body language here is very different. One thing that's similar is that he's going to keep his body open. He does tend to do that. But look how low his hands are. He doesn't show the same degree of confidence right here as he's going to when we watch him talking to his followers.
You see?
What did you learn?
I learned about people. That's what I do. I learn about people.
See, he's keeping his hands very low. We tend to associate that with lower confidence. And so when he's talking to somebody like a reporter and he's not in full control of it, he's not going to show the same level of authoritative behavior as you're going to see.
I learned about myself.
What about these people here?
Well, those people
what do they
here
think
are
of you?
people. Well, you know what they think of me? They think I'm the Son of God.
Do they?
So now he's talking about people believing that he's the Son of God as though it's an unbelievable thing. This is very similar to the way that Marshall Applewhite asks, which is, wow, can you believe that? It can be confusing to people because he's not insisting upon it. He's just saying, well, people believe this, and that can be confusing to people.
Revelation states that Christ has the key of David. Only he can open and none can shut. There's 150 Psalms here. Some people find it amazing that I know every one of them.
All right, so there's some of that grandiosity coming out. Wow, some people are just amazed at how smart I am. Look at my intellect. And so rather than coming out and saying, hey, I am so smart, it's, wow, some people are amazed by this. This is his way of sort of saying things to his vulnerable people without seeming arrogant. They'll think of him as humble even when he's being arrogant. Watch this part again.
Some people find it amazing that I know every one of them.
Vernon Howell,
People see this as a sort of dramatic sincerity.
33 years old, the same age as Christ, when he died on the cross.
Oh, this time, when Christ reveals himself, is going to be according to the book. Because there's some statements in there that might make you a little bit happy.
Howell drifted into Mount Carmel in 1981 after being kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
You see, the body language is very different. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of it just because it's hard to find footage that's not terrible quality except for things that are used like this. But you'll see his arms are up higher. He's a lot more confident. He's a lot more authoritative when he's in front of his congregation than when he's outside of it. So he needs his vulnerable people around him to believe him, and then he feels very powerful.
He won after being kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
There's a madman living in Waco. He's bowing his knee to bear.
All right, so he says there's a madman living in Waco. One of the things that you're going to learn about psychopaths, narcissists, grandiose people, they oftentimes will tell you who they are. They'll say, yes, I'm crazy. Yes, I'm a narcissist. But people don't take them seriously. They think they're being charming. And this is something we see over and over again.
Wait on me to the day that I rise up to the parade. We're hunting for my determinations to what?
Now you see that putting the nose up. Once again, We do that when we feel superior to others. And if someone's vulnerable, when they see you do that, they think that you are superior to them.
We're hunting for my determinations to what? That I may pour upon them my fierce indignation.
And doing this with such authority makes people feel that he is important. Once again, you got to understand, when it comes to cult leaders, it's about the vulnerable people. They know they're not going to appeal to the masses. They know they have their people. Marshall Applewhite definitely knows that. David Koresh seems to know that as well. But for the people that he appeals to, they are really going to believe everything he says.
Do you teach them?
I show them.
Or do you brainwash them?
Doesn't Christ brainwash you, gets rid of the filth, and puts in the good?
So only a cult leader can put a positive spin on brainwashing. I would think that would be alarming to anybody, but once people think of him as charming, he could say, and I know he's saying it to a reporter, but he could say something like that to him in front of him, and they would laugh. They'd think he's funny. Listen to this part again.
Studies.
Do you teach them?
I show them.
Or do you brainwash them?
Doesn't Christ brainwash you, gets rid of the filth, and puts in the good?
So we'll stop with David Koresh for now, but the way that he gets to his people, the way that he finds vulnerable people is through authority, as well as through what they see as dramatic sincerity. Even though obviously it's not sincere, people are going to see him as being overly sincere. People are going to see him as being very authentic and real and genuine. Now we're going to watch some of Charles Manson, head of the Manson family, who famously murdered Sharon Tate. We're going to be watching him engaging in grandiose fantasy, talking about times when he was in control and when he had followers that would do his bidding.
My brother's in jail. Now, understand my mind, all my life I've been in jail because I didn't have no one to get me out of jail. I didn't have no brother outside.
Now, one thing you hear Manson do oftentimes is talk about what a victim he is. I've analyzed this entire clip in another video that's a lot more extensive about this, but something you're going to hear from him from time to time is what a victim he is. He can't seem to help but include that and remind everybody that he feels victimized by society or by how he was raised, all of those kinds of things.
So I spent 22 years in prison because I didn't have nobody outside. I can't let somebody that's with me stay in jail. It just ain't, it's not in my makeup, man.
So basically, he's talking about a friend of his who was in jail, and he's trying to get money to get him out of jail.
And I got to get my brother out of jail.
So you needed money to do that?
Well, here's the division between your mind and my mind. Here's where the chamber opens up. When you get in trouble, you go to your mother.
Now, one thing that Manson also does, he's very erratic. He uses a lot of big body language. You see his hands open up a lot. He's somebody who is very kinetic. He constantly moves.
You call up mother. I ain't got no mother to call. Well, you go to the bank, draw some money, pay a lawyer. I ain't got no money. I can't go to no lawyer.
Now, one of the ways that Manson finds his followers and finds vulnerable people is by talking about his own struggles.
I go to a lawyer, I ain't got enough money. I got a little money, and anytime anybody knows anything about lawyers, when you got a little money, they're just taking that. They'll take the little money and let you sue them in court, you dig? In other words, like, I don't have enough money to go to the lawyer to get Bobby out. So everybody's standing around, and I said, pay me. Pay me what you owe me.
And so you can see he gets very intense when he gets in the fantasy of when he was powerful, when he could tell people to pay them what he owed them, to give him money. This is something that he is going to really tap into and feel deeply. Watch this part again.
So everybody's standing around, and I said, pay me. Pay me what you owe me. Now.
And as you can see, he leans his head down because he's talking to people below him. He thinks of these people as being below him. These are his followers.
And they said, well, how do we do that? I said, get my brother out of jail. He said, how do we do it? I said, I don't know how you do it. I don't care how you do it. Do it now.
And once again, this is that grandiose power fantasy. Look how powerful I am. I can tell you what to do. I can get angry, and you don't want to make me angry.
Do it. And they said, how do we do it? I said, don't ask me how to do it. I don't want to be no part of no conspiracy. But however you do it and get it done now. And I got all the rights then. And when I stand on the mountain and I say, do it, it gets done. If it don't get done, then I'll move on it.
So this intensity probably endeared some of his followers. It probably also scared some of them because they believed he was very powerful. So the idea that he can use this, he is getting back into it. He's getting into the anger. I think he feels this when he gets back into it because it's very, very exciting to him.
Did you tell the women to do their witchy things?
I said, if you're going to do something, leave something witchy. Just like I would tell you, if you're going to do something, do it well. And leave something witchy. Leave a sign to let the world know that you were there.
And this is once again how he makes people feel important. So you think about the contrast that we've seen. We've seen someone who's loud and aggressive and angry. And when he taps back into that, his body language follows that. But then he becomes, and I know most people probably don't feel this way, but he becomes charming. And then he lets little jokes in there. So he's chaotic, he's erratic, and he uses charm to get to his vulnerable followers. Now we're going to watch some of Keith Raniere. He is currently serving a 120-year prison sentence for his role in the sex cult NXIVM. What we're going to watch now is him talking about authenticity.
Be something that you think you should be. It's just a pure state of being. Mm-hmm. So one would say authenticity is being as you are and expressing as you are, at least to some degree.
Keith Raniere is someone who is subtly controlling. He manipulates in a very effective way. He has this sort of John Malkovich-like calmness about him when he talks. We'll keep going, but his is a little bit tougher to pick up on.
And as you are is, of course, the sum of your whole past. So when someone's being authentic, you get the feeling that not only that there's a person there in the moment, but somehow you reach into their very essence and you meet a unique individual.
So this is all a performance for him. We're not. It's really funny, actually, very ironic that he's talking about authenticity, but you're seeing a performance. Watch these different movements.
That.
So when he's pursing his lips, he's trying to look thoughtful, but he's not actually doing that. He's not actually being thoughtful. This is a performance. Watch this other part right here.
Not only that there's a person there in the moment, but somehow you reach into their...
So now he's doing this little bit of squinting. We call this eye shielding. Sometimes people do it when they're thinking about things they don't like, but he's trying to do it to look like he's concentrating and that he's really connecting with Allison Mack, who he's talking to right now. She also briefly was in prison.
Very essence, and you meet a unique individual.
And as you can see, his eyes look slightly moist. He's trying to bring forth tears, I think, as he's talking to her.
I don't know why, that makes me want to cry.
And it worked. It made her want to cry. So the way that he's doing this, he understands how to manipulate people. He knows the right things to say. The way he's talking to Allison Mack is likely a little bit different than if somebody else was sitting in front of him. But he knows how to read people. He knows the right things to say. And he knows the right expressions to use. Because the expressions and the behaviors he showed did not appear to be authentic. Once again, very ironic given the subject.
Unique individual.
And look at the intensity that he looks at her with. You can see as she's moving around, he actually moves his head to stay locked eyes with her. Watch. It's very subtle, but watch this.
You meet a unique individual. I think these are all things that we strive for.
Once again, this is him preying on vulnerable people. Not everybody is going to be vulnerable to his nonsense, but for the people that are, they can become very passionate about these things. They can feel very touched by this. And this is how people like him get cult members. This is how they get what they want. And the things that he did were really awful. I'm not going to go through and describe all of them at this point, but he is definitely not the subtle, nice person that he's coming across in this.
We strive as individuals, we strive to break through a type of existential isolation. We want to touch someone. We want to know that other people have souls. We want to experience this.
And see him reaching across the table. This is, once again, his way. Now he's got her connected emotionally. Reaching across the table that way is going to make the emotional connection feel deeper. So the way that vulnerable people are going to see Keith Raniere is intellectual and subtle. So hopefully watching this is helping you better understand how cult leaders use their behaviors and their body language to manipulate people that are vulnerable. I definitely plan to do more on cult leaders and do more of the Cult Control series. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. Before we wrap things up, though, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.